There we go. Hello, friends. If you hear a rumbly mechanical sound in the background, and you probably do, that is just my rock tumbler. I'm kind of a rock hound, something in my blood from my dad's parents, and my wife and daughters got me a rock tumbler for Christmas last year. So I collect. I have rocks everywhere, and then I decide which ones I want to polish up, and that's what's happening back there. Okay, so one question has been shot my way, and I do need to get on your stuff very soon. Michael Lodahl. Anyhow, I do want to make this video, though. Someone asked a question about Lofink's use of the term the priestly writings, priestly as ly after a priest, and this person wasn't familiar with that writing or with that language. Some of you may be, I don't know. This is some Old Testament scholarship, and this is not my forte, but I think I can help a little bit. Most biblical scholars today acknowledge that Genesis has a lot of evidence of having been, we'll say, edited or stitched together with some various streams of ancient Jewish tradition. Probably at one point, most of this was oral tradition. But in any case, what we have obviously all became written tradition. But they've isolated like various strands that editors appear to have, weaved or spliced together. The most dramatic example is right at the beginning of our Bible. I assume that some of you at least have heard of the idea of two different creation accounts at the very beginning of the Bible. This is just widely assumed among biblical scholars. I know you could find some that wouldn't accept this, but they're very the minority, and even in my opinion, as a non-Old Testament scholar, they're ignoring all the evidence. So let me real quickly, Genesis chapter 1, for example, beginning at the very beginning, and going through chapter 2, verse 4, and then just half of that verse. So chapter 2, 4 is usually called 2:4a, and then there's 2:4b, the second half of the verse. So that, remember, of course, when the Bible was edited together and written, it did not have chapters and verses. So that came much later, I think with Christian Bible scholars. I'm not sure about the Christian part. At least some of it was probably done by Christians. Added in the chapter and verses. So, here's the point. We think now, and I'm going to say we as like the majority opinion of Old Testament scholars, and then theologians like me who, read those people or at least have been taught by those people. Genesis 1:1 through 2:4a is identified as priestly, a priestly text. Why, you might ask? Well, I'll do it. I'm going to try to do this quickly. I'm never very good at doing things quickly. The fact that first story has its culmination in the Sabbath. Okay, that's where it all comes. It doesn't culminate with human beings. It culminates in the Sabbath, and the Sabbath, of course, is the seventh day, and it is sanctified. In fact, that's the term that's used in Genesis 1. And sanctified or set apart. And that is to be set apart for God and for God's purposes. The Sabbath, I think, is really the first thing in the Bible that is sanctified in this way or set apart. And it's a concern of priests and what we call now the priestly tradition to be obsessed with the proper divisions between things, and some things being set apart for God, and some not so much. Think about the idea of kosher foods and then non-kosher. That kind of division is sort of the priestly, we'll say, mentality and practice. Even the way that creation is described first as a God creating a rakia firmament, which is basically a very thin layer of something like metal that's been pounded very, very, flat. That's the firmament of Genesis 1. And it separates the water from the water, right? Separates waters above from waters below. So separation, much like Sabbath separated from the rest of the week. Then God, how's it say? The water is pulled back in a sense. The water's below. Then and they're, well, are they separated? In any case, dry land is able to appear because of these acts of kind of separation, and there's more of that in Genesis 1. But probably the most potent argument has been offered by a man named John Walton. He wouldn't disagree with anything I've just said, which is essentially like the logic of separating stuff in, day and night, waters above, waters below, water below in the land, Sabbath from the rest of the days. But John Walton of Wheaton College / University, I think it is now, in his really interesting book called The Lost World of Genesis 1. It's been out probably a decade at least. But Walton, as an Old Testament scholar, could do something I could not do. I'm not capable. But what he argues in his book is that Genesis 1 in the Hebrew definitely reflects the patterns of description of how to build a temple, as found in neighboring cultures of the people of Israel. So the idea would be that creation itself is being portrayed as like the temple or the dwelling place of God. And what was I going to say more about that? Oh, well, a temple is a very priestly concern. Where did priests operate? In the temple. So much more could be said about that, but that's generally thought of then as a priestly rendition of creation. Genesis 1:1 to 2:4a. Then at 2:4b, and you can check this with your Bibles, you have, we believe, a different story. And it really is a different story. So many ways to look at this. I may post a couple things that'll be of some help, maybe. But that second story, suddenly in the second half of verse 4, you have the first use of the term Lord in an English Bible, Lord with all caps. And I suspect you all know that signifies that in the Hebrew, we're dealing with like the holy name of God. Typically now pronounced Yahweh. A more old school pronunciation, of course, was Jehovah. We may have talked about this a little in class together. I don't recall. But so you have that first instance. Not at all in Genesis 1. In Genesis 1, you only have the term Elohim as the term that's translated into English as God. But now we have this holy name, and it's because it's regarded as holy, and that you shall not take the name of the Lord, all caps, in vain. So whether you want to pronounce it Yahweh or Jehovah, observant Jews don't pronounce it in any way. They just don't, because if you don't take the name at all, you definitely won't take it in vain. So the Jewish tradition substituted the Hebrew word Adonai in the place of whenever the holy name appeared. So we signify that in our Bibles. Adonai means Lord, and almost all English translations have sort of followed the Jewish sensitivity about the use of that name. So there's a couple translate. Of course, the Jehovah's Witnesses, they obviously don't worry about saying the holy name, and their translation does use the term Jehovah. I think there may be one Catholic version. I don't have this, but it's called the Jerusalem Bible. And if I remember correctly, the Jerusalem Bible, which probably came out in the 1960s, late 50s at the earliest, I suppose. I'm pretty sure it uses like Yahweh whenever the holy name is being encountered in the Hebrew text. But generally, we've just gone with Lord in all caps to signify this is the holy name that the Jewish tradition considers too holy, actually, to be spoken or to be on our lips. So that you get that name at the beginning, and then throughout the rest of chapter 2, and for that matter, chapters 3 and 4. So where the first chapter is often typically called a priestly account, the second one is called a Yahwist account. So this holy name is being turned into an adjective, a Yahwist account. And we can find these patterns more than just in the opening of the Bible, and I'll give you another example right after in another video.